Well, while we are waiting for Ambassador Barbara Leaf to join us on the stage, let me say Assalamu alaikum, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zainab Al-Badawi, or Zainab Badawi, and it's a great pleasure to be moderating this panel for you all. It's also wonderful for me to at last be able to attend the Suleimani Forum, because my good friend Barham Saleh has been inviting me for many years, and finally I have got to this beautiful, beautiful town. And I've only been here for 2 days, but I've already experienced the wonderful, famous Kurdish hospitality. And I also see my good friend Hoshia Zabari there. Very good to see you. So while we await Barbara Leaf, I've just been told that actually we can start without her in the interests of time. So our panel is going to be looking at this particular topic. You may have read it in your programs. We've seen, of course, major political changes in Syria, Lebanon, and other parts of the Middle East. And so we want to examine the implications of all this with the political and security dynamics of that strategic corridor that links Iraq to the Levant, and to see whether it's going to lead to new alignments or indeed whether it may create further instability. And to do that, I've got a terrific panel here of key movers and shakers with me. We have here to my left, His Excellency Saeed Khatibzadeh, who is the Deputy Foreign Minister for the Islamic Republic of Iran. You're also, sir, a former ambassador to Croatia, an advisor to the Foreign Minister in the past, and you now are Director General of a major think tank in Tehran, which is linked to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Your Excellency, Rebar Ahmed Khalid, you of course are the Minister of Interior here at the Kurdistan Regional Government, and of course you've held many senior positions in the KDP, so welcome to you also. My friend Dr. Abdulaziz Saghar. Your name Saghar in Arabic means eagle, doesn't it?
Falcon.
Yeah, falcon. And you have an eagle eye because you're very good as the founder and chair of the Gulf Research Center at making sure you keep abreast of all the developments in the Middle East, because of course that you run this global think tank which has a presence all over the Gulf, and we know you from your media appearances and also as editor and author of numerous publications. And then on my far left we have Dareen Khalifa, who is an advisor on dialogue promotion at the ICG, the International Crisis Group. And before that, she was an expert on Syria for the ICG. And of course, she's had a great deal of experience in mediation and has engaged with conflict actors herself. Previously, she was with Amnesty International and also the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue. And of somebody of Egyptian origin, and me having been born in the Sudan, I can also say, Doreen, that we are sort of neighbours, although you seem a bit distant at the moment. But thank you. So that's our panel. While we await Barbara Leaf, who some of you know, Ambassador Barbara Leaf is, of course, a former Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs. She has held a series of senior positions at the State Department, was also American ambassador to the UAE, and she's now a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. So when she arrives, she's just going to take her seat. But please, I want you to welcome our panel. Thank you. So, panel, I want you all to be brief at the outset, and I'll start with you, Deputy Minister, to just say, looking as an overview at the region, what is the most critical change in that strategic corridor that perhaps worries you the most? And you'll have a chance to expand on what you're going to say, but just give us a quick, brief overview.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored that Dr. Barham Saleh extended his invitation, and though it is my first time to be in Suleimani, but I hope that it's not going to be the last one. And I'm very glad to be here and being exposed to such a distinguished audience here. You're talking about Middle East. And Middle East is Middle East, probably the most internationalized region that the international politics has ever seen. Anything happens in this region is going to have effects on international politics. Everybody knows that from October 7th, what has changed and what has been that this region is experiencing a profound changes. We don't know if it is the last stage of changes or not, or we are in the state of becoming. But what I can say is that we are seeing both continuity and change. It is not just change, but there are those elements of also continuity in our region, and later on we can talk about both those aspects of changes in our region and those aspects of continuity. What is happening right now is very much alarming, is very much dynamic to have, and we have to wait and see what's going on later on.
Just very quickly, what is so alarming, briefly?
Occupation, the naked language. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, Barbara. I've already introduced you, so everybody knows who you are, but they knew you anyway, so it's okay.
I did my best to prolong the introduction that you can join us, okay?
Yeah.
What is happening right now, the most important part of what is happening is this naked language of force and, the situation of permanent war that we are seeing in our region, and this atrocity that we are seeing in Gaza, in Palestine, and also this lawlessness, if I can say, or past or post-pactum situation that we are seeing in this region, which is very much alarming.
So a lack of a rules-based order, as it were, and more conflict. Okay. All right. Minister of Interior, Minister Ahmed, what keeps you up at night?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the organizer of this very important event in Soleimania, and special thanks to the former president of Iraq, Mr. Barham Saleh, and the UK, the American University here in Soleimania. It's a great pleasure to be here and talking about one of the most important issues in the Middle East. I believe when we are talking about Middle East, we have to tackle the root of the problems. Unfortunately, globally and in the Middle East, locally, we are just talking about the conduct of the problems. The problems in Middle East started a very long time ago at the beginning of formation of the national states in Middle East, when it happened after the First World War and the formation of the national states in Middle East. So it wasn't fair to the nations who are living in Middle East. When we are talking about the stability and security and any kind of dynamic movement in Middle East recently, we have to talk about the equilibrium between the nationalities here who are living, who are from the Kurdish perspective. We have to take care of the future of all of the nations here in the Middle East, especially when it comes to the peace and security and stability and the development of the region. We, as a nation, we are one of the major partners in Middle East as Kurdistanian, as Kurdish nation, but unfortunately, through the history, there wasn't any fair resolution regarding our nation and the future of the region. Therefore, when we are talking about the stability, we have to be careful about the future of this nation. It's almost about 40 million people in Middle East without any entity. As the President Necip Barzani mentioned in his very strong speech, that we need peace and stability for everybody. And this will come through dialogue and peaceful dialogue with everybody, including our nation. We proved in this specific time that we can be a factor of stability, and we believe that our rights in Iraq should be according to the Constitution. And in every single country in the region which contain Kurdish nation, they have their right according to the peaceful negotiation with their governments and with their attitude and with their situation. So we will be more than happy to have a stable and secure Middle East, free of militias, free of any more conflicts, but having stability for everybody as a advantage.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister, for giving us that very Kurdish perspective there on how you see your interests align with the rest of the region. Ambassador Barbara Leaf, so I started off asking your fellow panelists to identify what they believe are the major critical changes or change, and in particular that which worries you the most.
Well, Zainab, thank you, and my apologies for being late. I'll blame President Netchervan for this. But no, I'm going to let a little bit of the optimist in me creep out, because what I see is the following. Over the last 6 months, we had really seismic change in a very large and really fragile, important piece of the landscape, which is Lebanon and Syria. And we saw once in a generation, maybe once in 2 generations, seismic change, which has, in a sense, liberated both the Lebanese and the Syrian from huge internal burdens on their sovereignty in the form of Hezbollah and in the form of many proxies that littered the landscape of Syria. And of course, most oppressive of all, 50 years of the Assad rule. Now, there are extraordinary opportunities there and equal measures of risk, of peril, to both those peoples and to the surrounding neighborhood. But what I think is quite important is that the key states of the region, especially the neighbors, but not only the neighbors, lean into the proposition of helping both the Lebanese and the Syrian peoples navigate this period of peril. Because honestly, the challenges, the threats, the odds are against successful transitions in places of such extraordinary fragility, trauma. But on the other hand, what a new world it is for the Syrian people. What a new world it is for the Lebanese people. So I worry about both states, but I also think that there are tremendous opportunities for the broader region to the degree those transitions succeed.
You're right, you are quite optimistic, although you, as you say, you rightly identify the real terrible consequences of failure. Abdelaziz Sagar, what's your view?
Well, first, let me say how pleased I am to be again in Sulaimania, thanks to the kind invitation of President Barham. It's a place I love and I like, and the first time I was in Sulaimania, probably before some of the students were born, 1981. So I've been to Sulaimania many, many years ago, and President Barham was kind enough last time to show me the different part of the beautiful city of Sulaimania. So thank you for the American University, very pleased to be here. When I think about what makes me awake at night, honestly, is the unfair and the injustice and the brutality and the what we call the genocide that the Israelis continue doing in the region, and how they are fully supported, endorsed by certain country in all what they are doing. You know, we thought, when I go back to Woodrow Wilson, his 14 points in 1917, and what he said, the right of determination for people, and that law have made Britain and France at that time upset, because it was the law that was used to liberate Algeria from France. It was the law that the Iranian left Bahrain with it in 72. It was the right of determination. You know, this is the America that we thought the model, the example. But when we see the full endorsement for Netanyahu government to continue doing what he has been doing, definitely it raises the question, you know, what is happening? You know, is it the same America that we are used to? Is it the same America that we liked? Is it the same? We differentiate, by the way, between people and policies. It's the same thing for me like Iran. I differentiate between the people in Iran, how much we like them and we know them, and the policies sometimes that has taken place. So that's definitely an issue, in my opinion, when we see that there is lack of role by the United Nations, lack of role by the key country in the European side, lack of really demonstrating how important to have law and order and how important to have the right of the people to be well protected.
Right, okay, so quite similar then to the Deputy Minister, that you feel that the situation in Gaza and elsewhere is the key
Not
thing.
only Gaza,
I mean,
it's,
yes,
it's the expansion in Syria, is the attack on
expansionism of Israel.
Lebanon, it's the support to the different militia, unfortunately.
The expansionism of Israel, as you say, in southern Syria, and obviously the land grabs in Lebanon and so on. I'm conscious that I don't want to duplicate what was discussed in the previous panel, so perhaps some of the topics that you want to cover there may have already been looked at in terms of the actions of Israel in the region. But Dareen Khalifa, what about you? What is the aspect that preoccupies you the most about these changes in the region, which were unthinkable, really, a year ago?
Much for having me, and thank you so much for our gracious hosts. I mean, I think Syria is at the heart of these regional changes. Am I worried about it? Yes, obviously, the challenges are immense. And really, there's so many moving pieces and moving parts in it. But I think I share Ambassador Leif's optimism when I say I'm less worried than I was when Syria was under Assad. The thing that really concerns me about Syria today is the regional rivalries and how they're playing out in Syria. I mean, there's the perception in the region today that a lot is up for grabs. There's a lot of competition, and things have really changed. The perceptions have changed. We're seeing this being manifested in very obvious ways, and the Turkey-Israel rivalry and how it's playing out in Syria. It's really, really alarming. I mean, Israel has had a free reign in Syria arguably since 2017. They've been going in and out, targeting Iranian assets, often targeting even regime assets. But since December 8 in particular, they've really doubled down on their kinetic approach. They've obliterated most of Syria's military facilities. They've moved in on the ground and occupied territory southwest of the Golan. They've called for a demilitarized zone. They've in essence, called for partitioning the country into zones of influence. So, I mean, the Israelis say they're concerned about how weak the current state of Syria is, allowing potential jihadists to work against them. They also say they're concerned about Syria's potential strength and how Sharia could potentially also turn against them. They say they're concerned about Jordan's security, about the protection of minority. But I think in essence, they're very worried about Turkey's growing influence in Syria. And if there's one thing a lot of Arab states, Israel, Iran, and even Russia might agree on, is their concern over growing Turkish influence in Syria. I mean, this Turkey-Israel rivalry in Syria is really taking different forms and shapes that are incredibly threatening, not just to the stability of Syria, but also to regional stability. We've seen recently that there is a deconfliction mechanism in place to try to de-escalate, but I think absent a direct de-escalation channel of communication between Ankara and Israel, or even between Syria and Israel, it does leave a lot of room for things to spiral out of control moving forward.
Thank you. Just before we continue, could I ask the people in the right-hand corner there to keep that door closed, because there's a lot of noise coming from outside, and if you would be so kind as to keep your voices low, because it's quite difficult to hear everything on the stage. So please do keep that back door closed. Thank you. All right, thank you for that, Dareen Khalifa, on Syria. So let's just unpick Syria. Let's stay with Syria for a moment, because that seems to have been mentioned a great deal. Ambassador Barbara Leaf, you were one of the first members of the US officials to actually meet Ahmed al-Shara, and we hear conflicting things about him. You know, he himself is presenting himself very much as a man that everybody can do business with. He wants to increase his, ties with the West and so on. I've got this inclusive government. He's got the interim constitution with civil protections and that kind of thing. And then there are those who say, look, he's, somebody who in the past has had affiliations with Al-Qaeda and ISIS and so on. So you've met him. Can he be trusted?
Well, I'll go back to Ronald Reagan and say, trust but verify. He comes across as deeply pragmatic, with even a touch of moderation. certainly a political leader, not simply a militia leader or a military commander. This is the way he has struck not just me or a few European diplomats in December. That impression has grown, has gelled with many other folks around the region having such encounters, leaders having such encounters. But in the end, he is going to be judged, I think, by how he responds to the many accumulating tests that lie out there just beyond our eyesight. And what are those tests? You saw them in March with the terrible atrocities on the coast and assaults on innocent civilians who had nothing to do with this sort of initial attacks by Assad regime elements. This was not directed, this response to that was not directed by Damascus, but Damascus clearly didn't have control. He asserted control, he promised accountability. We'll see, but that is one of the lurking dangers, threats to a successful transition, whether it's led by a Shara or anybody else, which is 50 years, especially 14 years of pent-up desire for vengeance, for reprisals. So keeping a lid on that is one thing. Being accountable and transparent is another thing. How he deals with security, the security dimension of challenges, is going to show his real colors. But finally, and most importantly perhaps, how he really makes inclusivity real. He may have a different definition, a narrower definition than what Syrians themselves want. But again, he is saying the right things and he is doing some of the right things, many right things. He is making a very good impression on regional leaders. But I think it stands to reason that as he is tested by these various challenges to a successful transition, that's how you will measure whether he is truly a man of pragmatism.
Deputy Minister, what's the view from Tehran now on Syria? Because, of course, you've seen the removal of the Assad regime and so on, and now you see groups that were allied to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is, of course, the group that Ahmed al-Shara led, the Sunnis in the ascendance and so on, and you've seen a real depletion of Iranian influence in Syria. How much does that worry you?
In 2013, I remember, let me tell you something. I was based in Berlin, and I remember I had close talks, discreet talks, with Syrian opposition. And in 2013, it was not the best time for Assad and his troops on the ground. We met in a hotel. 5 leading opposition of Syrian from different factions and sections met us. And I was in the middle of, I was among the Iranians who met them. Now we can talk and reveal that. During the whole years, we tried to reach out to different genuine oppositions and also elements in the government. At that time, I remember, I've heard that one of the key person in that meeting now, she has passed away. And she was brilliant, she was excellent. I don't know if the news is correct or not, but the lady was in the meeting. Probably she's not, if she's alive, probably she's not happy that I name her, but she told me in the meeting that why you are so insisting on Assad. And it was in 2013. She was kind of the interim prime minister of the opposition. I told her that, look, we are very much concerned about the post-Assad situation, in which occupation happens, in which, at that time, Daesh, ISIS, takeover, in which non-Syrian fighters get into the power, and Salafi extremist elements have this opportunity to exclude the others. And I name a list of our concerns. You are answering your questions. Now I am seeing the situation in Syria. I really would like to be optimistic. But should I be? Do we see less occupation now in Syria? Israelis has occupied not only Golan Heights, but also they are sitting 40 kilometers from Damascus. My dear friends, any country under occupation cannot see flourishing, cannot see development, cannot see stability, cannot see peace. And Israelis are not there to live, they are there to stay. Part of Syria is occupied by the United States, another part by Turkey. And do we are seeing an inclusive government? I really would like to see and believe transformation, trust what is happening. I see the hope there. But we need more than hope. Hope will result in frustration soon if we see all those concerns. Still, I am seeing the elements of those concerns.
All right.
But talking about Iran, we are sitting a little bit, far from Syria right now, cautiously watching what is happening and supporting the Syrian people. And this is what we are going to do. We are going to provide support with goodwill and our good office and trying to actually help the Syrian government to be as inclusive as possible and has the ground actually to try and hopefully less error of this government building in Syria these days.
So continuing engagement.
We are not rushing into anything. We are ready for engagement, okay? We are ready to help them. We are ready to support them. If Iran was not in Syria, now nobody can now talk about HTS. Daesh was in power right now. And we hope that HTS soon can, and Ahmad al-Shar can form an inclusive government and try to, how can I say, not to be offensive to our friends in Damascus, those non-Syrian fighters and extremist elements that were actually formed HTS. HTS was Syrians plus Chechens, Uyghurs, and many other non-Syrian fighters. We are not still sure where are they.
Okay.
And we are not sure exactly what are their roles. So we are ready for engage if there is any need on the other side.
Okay. Yeah, just very quickly, because I'd like to go to Abdelaziz Saghar, but yes, please.
No, I was just going to say the Iranian government is going to support the Syrian people. And in terms of bringing foreign fighters to Syria, well, of course, Iran brought Afghans and Pakistanis and Iraqis and others. So those have left, thank goodness. And yes, you're right. The foreign fighters in the big tent that formed the coalition with HTS, they are a problem.
Okay, well, let's pick that up with you, Abdelaziz Saghar, because we know that from reports that ISIS has really re-emerged in Syria. I mean, the Al-Sufan Center, the think tank based in New York, says that attacks carried out by ISIS in Syria last year tripled to about 700, and that they're more dispersed, and they're also worried about those ISIS operatives, thousands of them, who are being held in detention centers, and, various forces are trying to keep them contained. But this poses a real threat, not only to Syria, but the wider region.
The question is for me or for Abdelaziz?
For Abdelaziz Saghar, yes.
Thank you.
But you can answer it too, if you
Sure.
wish, Minister,
Sure.
after him. Yes.
First, let me say there was an interest by 3 countries that have led to the change in Syria. The Turk, they don't want to have Kurdistan in north of Syria. The Israeli, they want to have the Iranian out of Syria, and the pipeline that used to supply to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to all these things to be stopped. And the American, they want to see the Russian out. So these 3 interests have made it possible for somebody like Shara to move and to be there. Now, ISIS were fought by the whole region, whether Iraq, and there used to be the coalition against ISIS and so. ISIS cannot exist on their own. There must be somebody supporting them, providing them. They could not create their own economic independency like the other normal militant group that have created. We had a book in Violent Non-State Actor, by the way. We did a very nice study putting almost 22 sort of violent non-state actors in perspective. And we find a commonality between them. They all have an ideology. They all are linked to outside their country support. Gaddafi used to support the Irish, for instance. You know, they all have their own economic independence. You know, they build their network, and they all have their own economic independence. And they all grow in a failing state. And unfortunately, today in the Middle East, we have 7 almost states in difficult situations. Some of them are already failing, and some of them are already in the process of the failing state. Syria today, if we don't stand behind it, forget about the Salafists and the Islamists and the Shia and so. I was the one who managed and moderated the 2015 Syrian opposition meeting in Saudi in Riyadh, and I was the one who wrote the Riyadh Declaration. I insisted in the unity of Syria, on the mosaic. But, you know, believe it or not, in that room, when I had 176 Syrian, I almost had 176 Bashar Assad in that room. So every one of them, he thinks he's a president. He thinks he's the one that will manage and can rule the things. However, we need to endorse the current situation. We need to see how we can move that one. And we need to continuously, the Chinese, when they came to us in Saudi, they said, can you help us to get 800 of the rebels in Syria? From the jihadi side there, because of the Uyghur and so. So they do have, they still, the foreigner forces groups are still in Syria. They do exist. And I'm not so sure how quickly they can get rid of them, because they need to have the plan. We need to help them to get help out of them.
So, Minister, are you worried, the same question to Abdelaziz Sagar, about this vacuum as Ahmed al-Shara is trying to establish some kind of national defense strategy and security in the country, that it could be exploited, though, the vacuum, by the likes of ISIS?
Well, first of all, I would like to talk about the fight against terrorism in general in the region, more specifically in Iraq and Syria. We, as Kurdistanian, through the Peshmerga forces, we were the first forces who defeated ISIS on the ground by the support we received from the international coalition forces led by the United States, and we are highly appreciated for that support in general in Iraq and more specifically in Kurdistan. ISIS is, again, a conduct of some other problems in the region. It's not the problem itself. And the terrorism is a conduct of some other political, economic, and social problems in the region, and is a belief problem. I believe we have to tackle the ideology itself. Otherwise, we will face the terrorism in different shape, different name, and in different time, as it was in the past, with different name and different geography. The global coalition and the local forces were fighting terrorism, and still, when it comes to Syria, according to the positive change in Syria, what happened recently, yes, there is a vacuum, and the terrorism take benefit from this vacuum. There are more activities by ISIS in some areas close to Iraqi border, and we all are ready for supporting the new administration in Syria and Damascus. And recently, everybody is aware that there were a meeting between the neighboring country, including Iraq, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, and including Syria. They had a very productive meeting in Jordan to tackling this specific issue in Syria. Still, there is need to have a coalition, even it's locally or globalism, to have a good cooperation and exchanging information. The basis should be exchanged with each other to have a database for all of these activities and those members, and more specifically about the Al-Hol camp. Okay, it's one of the main threat and challenge, not to Syria, but to the security and stability to all around the world, because there's a large number of foreign fighters inside these camps, and thousands of Iraqi families and terrorism members are just stayed in these camps. So recently we had a very good cooperation with our partner in Baghdad and our regional partners that we have to tackle this issue, cooperating with the global coalition forces and even with Syrian, how to keep these areas safe and secure for everybody, because it's a real challenge for our border, and the situation will not be supportive if any kind of weak point will happen in this camps.
Thank you, thank you. Doreen Khalifa, so you're the Syria expert. Just do very quick points to you then. How real is the threat to ISIS, from ISIS, not only to Syria, but for neighbouring countries? And then very quickly, in addition to trying to create some security in the country, Ahmed Assad has also got to deliver something economically to the country. We know that Syria is still burdened by numerous sanctions. Saudi Arabia recently has just bought out its debt to the World Bank, which may open the way for it receiving more loans from the World Bank and so on, which will go some way to helping. But the sanctions are still there. The Americans say, show us the progress that we are looking to see on security and inclusivity and so on. But that is also a threat, isn't it? Because instability thrives on economic deprivation, and the vast majority of Syrians really are living on the brink.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And before I touch on the ISIS question, I think it's important to also give some agency to the Syrians here. I mean, the future of Syria is not going to be determined by what the Israeli or what the Turks or what any external actor wants on its own. I've known Ahmed Ashar for almost 7 years now, and we can agree or disagree on the level of transformation the guy has undergone, but I think we can agree that he's not to be underestimated. He is a strong operative in his own right. And what he wants today is become increasingly clear, especially in terms of foreign policy. It's obvious to me and to many in the region that he wants a zero problems policy with the neighbors, in particular with former foes. He's really, you can see that in the way they've pivoted in their relations with the Russians, first and foremost. They've struck deals with the Russians. They've done a lot of outreach to a long list of previous adversaries, including the UAE, including Lebanon. They're sending all the right signals to Iraq. But even with the Israelis, they're sending a lot of de-escalatory messages. So they understand in their focus on economic recovery and state building, they need to build a very broad alliance of external support, and they need to diversify. They can't be over-reliant on only their close friends, namely Qatar and Turkey. They need to win over the US. They need to win over the West, but also they need to at least neutralize their previous enemies in the region in order to avoid them destabilizing. And I'll just say one point. I'm really glad to hear from the Iranian side that there is an interest in trying to explore opportunities in Damascus, because the perception in Damascus today is that Iran is actively working to try to destabilize the transition. Whether or not that perception is true, I think if everyone in Syria believes that, that's what really matters at this point. And it is important from an Iranian standpoint to kind of rectify that, because the sense is that Iran is actively fueling an insurgency against Damascus, is trying to push the Kurdish forces away from peace talks with Turkey and from Damascus. So that perception is going to not really help Iranian positioning with the new reality in Syria.
Just hold that there. Could you just hold that there then, and let's get a response on that specific point from the Deputy Foreign Minister. Is Iran destabilizing Syria?
Actually, I think that the question is not about Iran anymore. Deviating the question, the real question on the ground, is not helping anybody. The question I told you is about the United States occupation, exploiting everything there, and now everything is in the hand of those who are supporting HTS and Ahmad al-Shah. Is Iran there? Is the moment that we notice the central government of Syria is not anymore interested to defend, the moment we left the country. Because we never are in a country to fight on behalf of the central government of that country. We are there to help on the request of the central government of that country. So you can see that we have a consistent policy of supporting central government, being Qatar, being full blockades of Saudi Arabia. You remember that, and United Arab Emirates. on the request of the central government of Qatar. And at that time, Qatar was supporting HTS very much, and we were not on the same side. With Turkey, when the coup happened in Turkey, and in Turkey, you remember, we had the mechanism of helping each other and trying to coordinate our differences over Syria through this Astana process. We stood the whole night to help our brothers and friends in Turkey. This is the consistent policy of Iran, to always trying to help stability in those, regardless of what the others are trying to portray. But to answering your question, or probably your point, the accusations always are coming when frustration happens. When people are disappointed, you are looking for some excuse. Now, everything is in the hand of Ahmadinejad and those who have sponsored him to be in the power there. That's it, period. Iran is not there. We are standing far from what is happening in Syria, cautiously watching. And I do recommend those who are supporting the Syrian government right now, trying to act responsibly. And trying to act responsibly. Iran, again, is fully ready, if there is any demand to help the Syrian government to transform in a more better, inclusive government. And this is the official message that I am telling you right now on the stage now.
Okay, all right, satisfied? Okay, since you've got the microphone, Deputy Foreign Minister, let's ask you about Lebanon, because similarly, Iran has seen a depletion of its influence in Lebanon, obviously with the problems that Hezbollah have had and the assassination of Nasrallah and all the rest of it. And now we see President Joseph Aoun and other members of the Lebanese government engaging with Hezbollah parliamentarians on the question of Hezbollah's weapons arsenal and devising a new national defense strategy. And yet we also get reports that Hezbollah is rearming through maritime routes now, and whether Iran has got some involvement in that. So I wonder if you could just comment on your government's position on Hezbollah and Lebanon and the new dynamics there.
Yeah. What is happening right now in Lebanon is very much a subject that everybody closely following, including Iran, and I believe that everybody who is interested in stability and peace in the Middle East is following. Hezbollah is a genuine Lebanese group. Hezbollah is byproduct of the Israelis' invasion of Lebanon in 1981. There was no Hezbollah before 1981. Hezbollah established when Israelis started occupation and invasion of Lebanon. Until there is an invasion, aggression, occupation, there is a resistance. And those who are from outside the region, extra-regional forces that they are forcing for the resistance to accept occupation, they will fail. With or without Iran, resistance will stay there. And you know that, I'm not just telling you because I'm Deputy Foreign Minister. I have different hats. I try right now to be not diplomat on this stage. Now, for the time being, I'm President of the Institute for Political and International Studies. Believe me, we are all living here. Those who are coming from outside our region, probably they are just reading, living with us, trying to be following what is happening. But we are living from this region. The deep frustration which is in the heart of everybody in this region, the wounds which are open. Just imagine a Palestinian that the Prime Minister of Israel, after killing and slaughtering 50,000 at least. I was ambassador in Croatia. Srebrenica. Srebrenica is part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and United Nations has recognized Srebrenica as a genocide which happened by Serbians. And you know how many people were killed in Serbia, which was now recognized as an ethnic cleansing and genocide? 8,000. 8,000. Too much. Ethnic cleansing, definitely a genocide. But what happened in Gaza, do you hear anything from the United States these days? Do you hear from those who are supporting Israeli and Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is coming out and say in the in front of all the podium, he's saying what? He's saying that let's finish the job. And those who are thinking that let's finish the job is about Iran, he knows that Iran is capable of what? So he's not talking about Iran. Maybe he's talking about, United States putting in confrontation, direct confrontation with Iran. But the most important thing that he's suggesting is to let's finish the job, making the Palestinian state being impossible to happen. How? But by no nation and by no territory. So as we are speaking, Nakba 2.0 is happening. This is the reality on the ground which is happening. So what I see right now in Lebanon is very similar to that.
Okay.
The arm of Hezbollah is a very domestic issue. It is up to Hezbollah as a genuine Lebanese political as well as political force in the parliament and the others. And we think that everybody has seen development within the territory of Lebanon.
Okay. Does anybody want to comment on the Lebanese thing? Ambassador Barbara Leaf?
I'd
Yes.
be happy to. Yes. No, actually what is also happening in Lebanon is the state being able to reassert itself vis-a-vis a parallel institution. Lebanon has suffered for 40 years from a parallel state and a predatory parallel state, which is Hezbollah. And long after Israelis had left southern Lebanon, Hezbollah continued to operate as such and as a threat to the sovereignty and agency of the state. And you've heard that from the new leadership of Lebanon, who are taking back Lebanese sovereignty. So that's one point. And then on Syria, well, I mean, yes, Iran supported the Assad regime, the central government, in its quest to brutalize millions of Syrians. So again, it's good to hear that Iran is now looking cautiously to support the Syrian people. But I will just say on the issue of occupation, you have a lot to teach other countries about occupying and bringing proxies onto their soil. And we, as yet, have not been told by the government of Damascus that we are occupying Syrian soil. Rather, we are helping contest ISIS, and we fostered the reconciliation and the rapprochement between the SDF and Damascus.
Okay. Abdelaziz Saad, just on Lebanon, would you just finish off on Lebanon? Is this an opportunity for new realignments and so on, given the real emasculation of Hezbollah?
Well, we're happy to see that Hezbollah power is getting lower and lower. It's not yet totally diluted. There is 3 levels in Hezbollah. There is a long-range missiles, which has been almost, dismantled and been attacked. There is the 100,000 militia that Hassan Nasrallah used to say, I have 100,000 fighter militia there. And then there is the public people that are in support of Hezbollah. We cannot get rid of Hezbollah. We have to find a way how to keep them busy domestically for the development there. But at the same time, we believe in the central government role, that weapon system should be in the hand of the central government. We believe in law and order, and not loyalty to a country outside. What drives us crazy here in the region, I think, just to say it for my good Iranian friend here, whom we know each other very well, still we are suffering from the Iranian agenda in the region. Interventionist policy, expansionist policy, using sectarian as a dimension of an expansion, maritime security issue, energy issue, all of this issue remains. We love the Iranian people as a people. We communicate with them, we involve with them, we indulge with them, but in no way we are going to accept. I am so pleased today the changes in Syria. So the corridor that was using Iraq, Syria to supply to Hezbollah is being cut now. And I think it's very important that Iran change its behavior in the region if they want to be in the region in peace. We have never involved in any sort of changing of regime. The Iranian choices of regime is theirs. We wish to see prosperity and healthy and a prosper nation in Iran. That's their issues. If they focus on their domestic development, they have a market of 400 million people around them. I'm sure they're going to have a better negotiation with somebody like Trump because he can see the potentiality on the business side and the dollar and the cent. But at the same time, they still can live in the region with no interventionist policy, with no support of militia. Iran decided to go with the militia and not with the state. They support Hezbollah, but not the Lebanese state. They support the Houthi, but not the Yemeni government. They support the Hamas, but not the Palestinian government.
Okay, all right.
Zainab,
Well, you're not pulling your punches. Minister Ahmed wanted to speak, and then very quickly, Darina.
Very quickly, just on ISIS, because I'm conscious that I didn't respond to that ISIS question. I think the counter-ISIS mission in Syria in particular was incredibly successful, right? The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces is an invaluable partner to the US. They've achieved a lot, not just in rooting out ISIS, but also stabilizing the areas under their control. But the existential flaw in the mission has always been the fact that there was no exit strategy that left like room for a plausible way out for the US without leaving a massive mess in its wake. Right? The assumption was that the Kurdish forces were going to strike a deal with the Syrian regime, with the Assad regime, and that they were all going to live happily ever after. It was just a flawed assumption because Assad never negotiated, never compromised. And for anyone who was listening to Assad or to the SDF knew that that was not possible. Today, that has changed. There is plenty of room for finding mutual agreements between the Kurdish forces and Damascus in a way that would both keep a lid on ISIS, but also preserve a lot of the gains that have happened in the last few years. And I think one thing can undermine that is the US leaving Syria in a way that is uncoordinated and before a final agreement is reached, that could completely undermine the current negotiations and backfire on all parties.
And that reflects the debate that's going on in Iraq about the presence of the international coalition force and the US forces in Iraq.
Unfortunately, we are suffering from the inconsistency of the US policy in the region. Right. Do we trust the US policy in the region? There is a big question mark in that side.
Yeah, okay. Minister Ahmed, briefly, if you would, because I do want to come back.
I will try to make a link between all of this part of this puzzle. In Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran, and taking benefit from the old experience in the Middle East, where different countries just try to have weaponizing the region. It's not good for the stability and the security for this specific area, because it's not just related to local interests, it's related to the international and to the superpower forces all around the world. When we are talking about the weaponizing in Lebanon, in Syria before, and before the previous regime in Iraq, they did the same, and now in Iran. So everybody is spending a large number of billions of dollars for this weapon. And at the end of the day, they are not taking any benefit. They are just trying to destroy the stability and the peaceful and the coexistence in Middle East. So we have to focus internally in our countries to build our capacity internally and to integrate each other in the Middle East in different way within the economic process and development areas.
Thank you very much indeed. And as always, for your government, you've got to have this balancing act between the various influential actors in the region, Turkey and Iran and so on, but that's a whole big area we can't go into right now. Saeed Khatibzadeh, I'm sure a lot of people in this room would be very interested in knowing what you have to say about the current track of talks between the Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, and Steve Witkoff, the US envoy. You've had these talks in Oman under the auspices of al-Busaidi at his home, I believe, just 10 minutes from the airport. The Iranians were on one side of the hall in one reception room and the Americans on the other side, but apparently the two did meet briefly in the hallway as they were exiting, and more talks on the 19th of this month. So you've got your red line area of you don't want to dismantle your nuclear program at all, you want to maintain it, for civilian use and so on, and the Americans, now we know clarity from Steve Witkoff in the Fox News interview yesterday that President Trump does want the complete dismantlement of your nuclear program. So your red line, the Americans' red line, is there any hope for these talks?
May I just reflect to my, first to my very beloved, old friend Abdulaziz, whom I know for many years, that we have obviously our own understanding of different files. But labeling those files and reducing those files to one or two elements are oversimplification, and by oversimplification, probably you lose preciseness of the subject which is happening. Each of these files has its own nuances. When we are talking about Iraq, you cannot reduce to one or two elements. When we are talking about Yemen, when we are talking about Syria, when we are talking about each of these files has their own definitions, and probably this stage is not a good place to discuss all these issues. But let me just assure you that now it is the time for reconciliation and rapprochement inside the region. And this enforced agenda from outside for many decades have failed. And this is why inside the region we have to, and Iran-Saudi Arabia rapprochement is one of the examples. We did it, started from Baghdad. From Iraq. The discrete talks happened first here. And then it continued and developed and wrapped up in Beijing. United States was there? No. Europeans were there? No. So it shows to what extent, if there is a will, there is a way out. Those who are coming to this region, necessarily they are not coming with good intention and goodwill. They have their own national interest in their eyes, and this is what every country on earth does. Every country on earth, national interest first. But getting back to your very important question. President Trump started with non-starter negotiating position. Either bomb or paper. You remember that? When he came to office, he started with this non-starter negotiating position. Very excessive one. And the response from Tehran was to rejecting the negotiation altogether. When you come with non-starter negotiating position, you get non-starter response. Then President Trump modified through the letter. The letter was a little bit complicated. It has different interpretation, as our foreign minister said. But we tried to read between the lines, and we opened up a diplomacy. Iran opened up a horizon for diplomacy through indirect talks in Oman, which we used to try under President Obama and under President Biden. After 2 weeks, President Trump sent us a message that he's ready to meet us in Oman on Saturday. We did that. The meeting was constructive. There were different issues that were subject to discuss. Of course, our differences were there, but the first assessment was that we can work out if the other side comes with workable framework. We are not negotiating on the stage. We are not negotiating in Fox News. We are negotiating in the closed room with the real agenda, which is addressing non-proliferation concern of the other side, if it's genuine, and ensuring that this time the other side is not cheating and will honor its words and will remove sanctions. So the sanction relief aspect of the talks is another wing. So if we can bring the balance between these two, then we can work on an acceptable framework. No country on earth compromise on its national security. Definitely Iran, as the oldest continuous civilization on earth, will not accept that. We know our challenges, we know our capacities. We are not going to neglect or abandon our only means of defense. So I'm sure that the American side also either has reached to this point or soon will be reaching to this point that Iran is not posing threat to any other country. Our threat perception are there. Every means that we do have are just to meeting our threat perception. And by the way, Iran is member of NPT. Iran is member of IAEA. As we are speaking, the monitoring is happening on the ground on Iran. Iran has never diverted its new peaceful nuclear activities, and Iran will never weaponize its program.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And just very quickly, because we've run out of time, a yes or no answer from all of you. I asked at the outset, new alignments, further instability in the region, yes or no? Further instability, Abdulaziz Saar?
Comme ça.
Comme ci, comme ça. Minister Ahmed.
Yeah, it's one of the wishes to have this security and stability.
Okay, further instability.
I would like to say, I hope for so.
Ambassador Leaf.
High risk, but there's high opportunity.
Dareen Khalif.
I agree. I remain optimistic.
Well, that's a very good note on which to end this particular panel. Thank you to all my panelists for their very interesting, vigorous discussions. I wish we had more time. Give them a round of applause. Please stay sitting, because we now have just a couple of remarks from Cardinal Sarko, the head of the Chaldean Church in Baghdad. Please come to the stage. My panelists, please stay on the stage while the Cardinal speaks. Please stay on the stage. Thank you very much indeed.